Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeremy Edson. I am the Marketing Coordinator here at HydroPoint Data Systems, and I want to welcome everyone to the 8th webinar in our educational series focused on outsmarting the drought. We are expecting this webinar to last approximately 20 to 30 minutes today, with a short question and answer section at the end. Should you need to jump off at any time, don't worry. We're going to be recording this entire webinar, and we'll be posting it online afterwards. If you have any trouble, feel free to type in your issues to the chat section on the right-hand side, and we will respond to them accordingly. Also, please post any questions you may have in the Q&A section on the right panel, and we will address them at the end. Our moderator for today is Meg Mason. She is the Marketing Director at HydroPoint Data Systems. HydroPoint is a smart water management company that was founded in 2002, based out of Petaluma, California, just north of San Francisco. And now I will turn it over to Meg for her to do a quick overview and to introduce our guest speaker for today. Meg?
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy, for that introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the important topic of water conservation. If you're tuning into this webinar series for the first time, I just want to reiterate the fact that this is not an advertising platform for HydroPoint or any other products or services, but more a platform to discuss best practices or solutions that have worked for industry's leaders. As most of you guys know, on April 1st, the governor's executive order mandated that California reduce its water use by 25%, and we are now in a new era where being blind to water waste is no longer economically, legally, or socially sustainable. And with that, I would like to introduce today's guest speaker, Peter Yolles, who's the founder and Chief Policy Officer at WaterSmart Software, whose career is focused on driving the sustainable use of water resources. Peter believes that WaterSmart can transform the relationship between water utilities and consumers to educate, inform, and encourage the efficient use of water in everyday lives. So, Peter, thank you very much for joining us today.
Meg, it's great to be with you.
Perfect. So I will just go ahead and jump into our first question for you, Peter. First off, why don't you tell us a little bit about WaterSmart and how it works and where you have implemented it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So WaterSmart began in 2009 really to help water utilities help their customers save water, energy, and money. And the way we do that is by applying 3 new technologies or disciplines, behavioral science, cloud computing, and data analytics all together into a new cloud-based software platform that is accessible to utility managers and to their residential and commercial customers. So how that works is we analyze water meter information that's already collected by the water utility, and we create groups of people who are similar in similar attributes like same number of people in the home and the same yard size, and we compare their water use to each other and give them scores or rankings. And then we send out reports to all the water consumers in that utility service area. And they get these reports on a regular basis through the mail or by email. And that really educates them and motivates them to take some action to save water at their home or business.
And you said your customers are residential and commercial, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. And we also, we now work with about over 40 different cities and water utilities across the country in about 7 states. Most of them, majority of them are here in California, and we're helping them to, of course, respond effectively to the drought.
Interesting. Well, great. Well, so let me know, how can WaterSmart help water suppliers meet this ambitious water conservation targets that have now been set by the Water Board in California?
That's a great question, and really I think the key that the State Board has set out is a performance-based objective of reducing demand by about 25% by February of 2016. Now, all 400 or so utilities in California have been placed into a specific tier or requirement. So the state on average is trying to achieve a 25% goal, but each of those 400 utilities actually has a specific percentage target that ranges between 8% and 36%. So some of these communities are in that top tier. 36% is going to be, very challenging to achieve that. And the way the board determined which tier a community should be in is based on their gallons per capita per day of consumption. So those communities that are using about 200-300 gallons per capita per day are going to be in that highest tier. And so in addition to this performance objective, there are a number of other requirements or limitations that every community in California is going to have to implement. Things like restrictions on the number of days that a house or business can water their yard, for example. They can't allow their irrigation to spray onto any hardscapes like sidewalks or streets. So there are a number of other aspects to the requirements that the state board has set out. And what WaterSmart is doing to help is, first, WaterSmart is proven to reduce water demand by about 5% per year. So for the state, that, if we can save 5%, that's a fifth of the way there already, just by implementing WaterSmart's software technology platform, which is very affordable and can be implemented almost immediately. So
Peter, let me interrupt you for a second. What exactly do you mean by water demand? How are you quantifying that?
Well, good question. So the way that the utilities have to report to the state board is that they report on a monthly basis how much water is being produced for their service area, and then they divide that by the number of occupants or residents in their service area. That's what they have to report on, and that's the data that the State Water Board is using to calculate their improvements, their changes in water demand. That's what I mean by water demand. And then the reporting is going to be based on how they're doing in 2015 in any month compared to that month in 2013, so 2 years ago. So that's the reporting that the utilities will be having to do on water demand.
Got it. And so that's let's take into account, let's talk about a local city like San Francisco, where there's so many people for smaller areas, no one really has yards, those kinds of things. You take someone like that, then you take some other, suburbia city where everyone has, acre lots and those kinds of things. Are those types of things taken into account too?
Yes, the state is taking that into account by looking at the gallons per capita per day.
Got it.
At WaterSmart, in our software, we are also looking at that, and we actually are estimating or asking people to let us know how many people live in their homes so we can have a much more accurate sort of bottom-up view of gallons per capita per day on a house-by-house basis. We're also looking at the square footage of the lot size, so that we can estimate whether or not a particular user is being water efficient outdoors as well as indoors.
Got it. Completely makes sense. Well, perfect.
So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think to expand a little bit further on your question about how WaterSmart helps suppliers meet the conservation targets and requirements. Another way that we're doing that is we're implementing technology and tools inside of our utility dashboard. So we have a couple different components of our technology. The first is the home water reports, which I mentioned. The second is a mobile and online portal where customers can go and look at their water use and see their comparisons and recommendations. And then the third is the utility dashboard. And that utility dashboard incorporates different drought compliance tools that allows the utility to track their gallons per capita per day, to identify and notify customers of leaks, and to report back to the state about their water demand and their improvements in water efficiency as we go through this drought.
So your software is actually able to identify leaks so that the user is aware of it in advance, so that there's no sort of catastrophic water loss. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly, Meg. The software is running algorithms and analyzing the water meter data all the time, and so we're able to identify not just whether or not there is a probable leak, but also what kind of leak it might be. So, for example, the signature of a toilet leak is going to look a lot different from an irrigation system leak, which might be much more spiky and have a higher volume in a very short amount of time, versus a toilet leak, which might have, let's say, 3 gallons an hour continuously for days and days. So then we're able to notify the customers by text message or email that, hey, you might have a leak, you might want to go check it out, and then we provide step-by-step instructions for how any customer can go identify and find and even solve the leak on their own.
So this brings up another question. Does the software allow people to see where their water is being used? Let's say, example, like a shower, kitchen, toilet, outdoor watering, those kinds of things?
Yes, we do. Actually, we have a pie chart that displays exactly that, how much water is being used by different end uses, faucets, showers, irrigation. And the way we're doing that is through analyzing the water meter data over the prior year's consumption history.
Got it.
And then looking at how old the home is, how many people live there, how big their yard is, and then we make some common sense assumptions about where that water is likely to be going. And the important part is not to be accurate to, 1%. The important part is to give people a direction about where most of their water is being used, and to give them ideas for how they can save the most water and money by doing, 1 or 2 things at their house or business.
Got it. Completely makes sense. So let me ask the next question is, what are some of the challenges you see for everyone in the state for reaching a conservation target of 25%?
So 25% is actually a very significant target. It's going to be a challenge for most utilities to achieve that, let alone in just 9 months by February of 2016. So this is going to be difficult. And the voluntary efforts that the state has tried so far have not really been effective. And you can see that in the results that the state has showed so far. I think a 3% reduction only in the most recent reporting month. So where we think the challenges are going to be in 2 areas. The first is in changing behavior. And changing behavior is important because it's something that can be done immediately and has a big impact and has a lasting impact. The traditional ways of educating customers and changing behavior using mass media and a one-size-fits-all approach has not been particularly effective. So what WaterSmart is combining is an approach to use behavioral science techniques about personalizing water messages and giving unique and individualized recommendations for the best ways to save water. That could be changing behavior, like taking a shorter shower or adjusting their irrigation controller, or it could be a retrofit, like taking advantage of different rebate programs, for example. So that's one, changing behavior. The second challenge is in outdoor irrigation. And most people set their irrigation controller and kind of set it and forget it. Or it's managed by their landscaper. And changing the outdoor irrigation is really a big challenge, as you well know. And WaterSmart is able to help educate them about, just recommending they go try to find where their controller is, and thinking about educating them about how to manage it or set it. So, for example, if a city has a new regulation of allowing watering for only 2 days per week, that means a household or homeowner is going to have to go find that controller and reprogram it. And they're probably going to need some help in order to do that. In addition, WaterSmart is also helping the utility to help identify which homes are complying with the days per week watering restriction and helping them identify which homes might need help so they can do some outreach and educational efforts to support their customers in complying with the new restriction.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, we found over here as well is that just the education and communication is so key these days, especially anywhere from, just like you're saying, a resident who doesn't even know where their irrigation controller is on their home. You know, that's just the first step as well, and just the communication of and the visibility that, you know, those things are needed. That's really huge, and it was almost the first step in all of these things.
Yeah, for sure. And then I'm sure, like the technology that you have, that automating as much as possible the irrigation management is probably the best way to encourage compliance with these new days per week watering restrictions.
Definitely, definitely. So let me ask this then. Have there been any valuable lessons learned let me change that. Have there been any lessons learned or surprising responses to implementing new programs?
Yes, absolutely. There are maybe three really important lessons that we've seen. The first is we realized that people really don't know how much water they use. And so when we send out our home water reports, oftentimes they're learning about how much water they use for the very first time. And it's been shown in research that people underestimate how much water they use by 3 or 4 times. So the average of the response that people say is they think they're using about 25 gallons per day, when in fact the average across the United States is 100 gallons per capita per day. So you can imagine how surprised people might be when they see an answer that's 4 times more than they think. And the common response is, either I can't be using that much, or my meter must be broken. And so
really?
that often, come check they call the utility, they say, come check my meter, there's nothing wrong. But in fact, it's not wrong, and their own conception of their water use is really different, because the water they see is when they're using it for running the tap for brushing their teeth. But most water is being used outdoors in their landscape, and they don't see it and they don't think about it, and that's why it's so important to have good landscape management and water and irrigation management at home and at their business.
Perfect. Well, that ties in right to our next question is, how does landscape irrigation fit into WaterSmart's methods? Great
question. So there are 3 things that WaterSmart is doing with irrigation. One is, as I mentioned, we're analyzing water consumption based on the water meter, and so we're looking at irrigation, the amount of irrigation at a particular site all the time, and comparing that to other locations just like them with similar attributes, and we can let them know, are they using a lot or a little? Are they being efficient outdoors? The second is we're doing a comparison, and that allows people to know how they're doing relative to other people like them. And then the third is we can recommend specific ideas or recommendations that would be useful at their home or business to save water in irrigation. So it can be things like adjusting the irrigation controller, or installing a weather-based irrigation controller, or converting to a more water-efficient landscape. Mm-hmm. And those are all really important things that people may not be thinking about all the time.
Mm-hmm. Have you noticed a lot of conversation of people just freaking out about grass and turf and just going, let's just rip out the grass and put in drought-tolerant plants?
Yes, we're seeing more and more of that, especially as the state and local utilities are supporting higher and greater rebates for turf removal. Yeah. And so there's high level of interest. It's a really challenging area right now, and I think exciting area, because what we're seeing, I think, we're in the beginning of a market transformation of outdoor landscaping, and that grass is no longer the gold standard. It's more about native vegetation, things that look beautiful, maybe edible landscapes, things where people can get as much utility and beauty while also using a whole lot less water and implementing more advanced irrigation technology like drip irrigation and micro sprays and weather-based irrigation controllers or internet-connected irrigation controllers. All those things are really important, and we're seeing the need for a whole new industry around water efficiency and landscape and irrigation management to support a whole level higher of awareness, interest, and investment in beautiful but also water-efficient landscapes.
Definitely, and that, again, circles back to that education and communication as well, is educating the end users that, you can still have a gorgeous landscape, and it doesn't have to be the traditional green grass you're thinking of. You can still, conserve water, still have a gorgeous landscape, just changing the thinking a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a big opportunity. I think that one that allows people to continue their lifestyle, or even improving their lifestyle while also reducing the amount of water they use and the cost they pay for water.
Definitely. And all, of course, going back to changing the behavior and making them more aware of the data of where they're using the water, and making them more aware of exactly how it's being used. Just like you're saying, people are usually shocked with how much water they're actually using, and always think it's something wrong with the water meter.
Yeah, it really starts with the data and how the data is used to educate and change behavior, because just by telling people how much water they use is really not enough. It has to be in context. It has to be personalized. It has to be in context with how they compare with people around them. That's really the core of what has been shown to be incredibly effective at changing behavior, is that social context and the comparison with similar households and businesses. Yeah. That is really crucial. It's a crucial point, and we're seeing more and more utilities adopt this social norm-based comparison as a key component to educating and changing behavior.
Completely makes sense. So now I'll move over to Jeremy for a couple audience questions.
Absolutely, Meg. So looks like we do have a few. One of the questions is if we know what will happen if California does not reduce or meet that 25% mandate by February of next year. Obviously, I think we've all heard about the fines that are going around right now to individuals, but is there a more serious consequence that may occur if the goal isn't met within a year?
So I think that's the $60,000 question. I think partly the reason why the February date has been set is because it's been said that Southern California has about a year's worth of water left, and we want to see if we can get there before the water year begins in 2016. And so clearly, if next winter is not a normal or above average water year, there are going to be some even more stringent requirements that the state might implement. So let's avoid that by doing the best we can this year and implementing outdoor irrigation efficiency and behavior change and on all of the above strategy for reducing water demand. So that's obviously the biggest consequence, is that we as a state might be in even bigger trouble next year if we don't take action today. And the second is that, yes, there may be fines. I think the amounts that the state has indicated is that it might be $500 to even up to $10,000 for utilities that perhaps don't comply with all the regulations or restrictions. So, those are some of the implications of what might occur. And we've seen the state has been willing to even cut back on water rights in some cases. So there are some, significant and serious consequences if we as a state don't pull together to achieve some significant gains in water efficiency.
Mm-hmm. And that's interesting how you, circling back to saying everyone wants to be compared to how they're measuring up compared to everyone else, is moving over to social media and drought shaming via social media. That seems to be a huge scare tactic, because you don't want to be the one that someone's taking a picture of your front yard and you're, watering 5 days in a row and you're watering your sidewalk. And so it's all very interesting how everyone's behavior changes, and you're all being compared against each other.
Right. Well, letting each individual person know privately through the home water reports, I think, is the best first step before anything becomes public. And let's make people aware of how they're doing, so that they're less likely to be part of that drought shaming trend. I think utilities have been, increasing the use of sort of deputizing all their citizens to be on the lookout of water waste, and the use of new technologies like, snapping photos and sharing them with the utility, or putting them online, even for, in the case of celebrities, all does a lot to raise awareness, and I think opens people's eyes that it's something they should be looking at in their own home and business.
Definitely. Well, I think we have time for one more question, Jeremy. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, so one of the other questions was, obviously most of the discussion today was focused around California. We had a question, I think, out of state, where they asked if your WaterSmart technology is available in every state in the country, or if it's just here in California.
WaterSmart is available in every state of the country. We currently work in 7 states from coast to coast. And I encourage people to, visit WaterSmart.com to learn more about how they can access this technology and even get a demonstration.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Peter, for joining us today. Again, in a couple hours, we will have the recorded session online on the Drought webinar webpage. It's hydropoint.com/drought-webinar, and we'll have this webinar loaded on the page in a couple hours. So thank you again, Peter, and to everyone listening in today. It's been a great session, and thanks again, Peter, and have a great rest of your day.
Meg, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye-bye.